There are shows with psychics.
And there are shows with doctors.
But there's no show like The Psychic and the Doc.
Your practical paranormal power unleashed.
This show synthesizes the talents of world-class medium Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer, psychic explorer,
and street smart spiritualist, behavioral psychologist, Dr. Pat Baccili. All subjects are on the table and no topic is taboo. Inspiration, insight,
action, and fun as Mark Anthony connects callers with loved ones in spirit,
in tandem with Dr. Pat's fresh, no-nonsense, street smart, intuitive insights. And she is hilarious.
Extraordinary problems
require extraordinary solutions, which may come from this side
or the other side. This is The Psychic
and the Doc, and it starts now. Welcome, everyone. I'm Mark Anthony, and this is The Psychic and the Doc. You're listening to the Transformation Network. And my esteemed and amazing co-host, Dr. Pat Baccili, will be back next week, but we have a very special co-host, the one and only Rocky Trainer. Rocky, thanks for co-hosting tonight.
Hi, Mark. It was a last-minute thing, but what's the theme of the show?
Thanks for being a friend. And
I am yours and you are mine. And we're so happy to be here on the Transformation Networks, The Psychic and the Doc, sending love and light out to Dr. Pat and Linda, our executive producer. We miss you, and they will be back soon. And Mark, you go on into the show, and we'll share some things.
All right, well, everybody, this is a call-in show. I will be conducting mini readings, and Rocky, while she may not be a psychologist like Dr. Pat, Rocky has an amazing wealth of life experience and insights. And the call-in number is 1-800-930-2819. That's 1-800-930-2819. So we will be taking your calls. And before we get into talking about friends, the other day, it was the 89th anniversary of D-Day. And it's, 79th, okay? 79th anniversary of D-Day, which was June 6th. And D-Day, known as Operation Overlord, was the Allied invasion. British, American, and Canadian troops invaded northern France to liberate it from Nazi Germany. And it was fascinating. I was watching on the news, and President Macron of France was there at Normandy, and they had a number of D-Day veterans. Now, you figure these men, and there was a number of women there too, because a lot of women were involved as well.
Yes.
They were probably 20 when this happened. So you add 20 and 79. We had a lot of people in their late 90s and early hundreds that were there.
Yes.
It was amazing. And we can't lose sight of the fact that what was that war about? I mean, obviously you had a tyrannical dictator, Adolf Hitler, and his sidekick, Benito Mussolini, and at that time, Japan as well. They were all authoritative, totalitarian dictators. And these are the type of societies that target, quote unquote, fringe groups and people they don't like, round them up, remove their rights, ban books, suppress freedom of religion, freedom of the press, all types of freedoms. And so those brave men and women, and so many died that day during the invasion of Normandy. They died for freedoms that many of us have taken for granted, but which in a very shocking way are actually under attack now. So the sacrifices made 79 years ago are just as relevant then as they are now. But I did want to take a moment to honor all our members of the military, all of our active duty personnel, all of our veterans, and all the veterans who have passed on. Thank you for your service, because you all really are our friends and our heroes.
Yes, they are. They most certainly are. And with this call-in show, 1-800-930-2819, maybe Mark can connect you with some of your loved ones and help heal your hearts. And I want to say, Mark, it's such an honor to be here with you. And I was trying to do the number with you in tandem, so I didn't mean to interrupt. So forgive me for that.
Right.
I'm
Hey,
usually
well, I
behind the
appreciate
camera,
that.
not in front of the camera. And
Right. Understand. And, you know, friends, what's life without friends? Um, we have a family that we're born into, and friends are our chosen family members. And you know, if people want to call in to make connections with their loved ones in spirit, that includes friends too. You know, we were talking about the other day at the production meeting, well, what's the theme today going to be? And it said June 8th is Best Friends Day. And of course, you know, everyone started humming that song, Thank You for Being a Friend. And it was Linda Firing that said, well, let's call it Thanks for Being a Friend. And so here we are, because it's important to acknowledge your friends. My two best friends, the two best friends that I've ever had in this world, have both passed. And in the last year, I have lost a number of friends, and strangely, all from cancer. It's just, you know, it's really hard when somebody that you've known for so many years, for so much of your life, you think they're always going to be there, and then one day they're not. I mean, they're always there spiritually, but their physical presence is not. And so I think it's important to honor our friends in spirit as well as in this world. And you know, Rocky, don't you think it's important for people listening that if you haven't talked to a friend for a while, instead of just texting, don't you think pick up the phone and call?
yes, because texting, I believe, you lose some of the depth of the soul, some of the voice that can be heard, the inflection of how your heart and soul feels towards people. And you lose a lot because it's just flat letters. And of course, yes, texting is great if you're in a meeting or you don't have time to speak to someone and acknowledge I'm on my way or whatever. But picking up the phone and calling someone has so much more depth and meaning. And yes, pick up a phone, call a friend. I mean, I've been doing that for the past couple of weeks, just touching base with friends who I haven't been in touch with in a while. And they go, gee whiz, thank you so much. I was thinking about you. How are you? And that is something that we all forget to do. And with your wonderful gift, Mark, of spirit communication, isn't it amazing how there was a time when the phone would ring and before you picked it up, you knew who it was? Before we had answering machines, you would think of someone saying, gee, I'm thinking of this person. You get home and then the phone rings again and someone says, gee, I was trying to call you earlier. And you go, holy smokes, I was thinking about you.
Yeah,
Those type of things.
yeah. Part of the problem with our modern technology is it's insulating a lot of our natural intuitive abilities. Because I remember being a kid and the phone would ring, and I'd say, I know that's, you know, I remember one time in college, the phone rang, and I picked it up and I go, hi, Sally. And it was my friend Sally on the phone. She goes, oh my God, you know, and it was so funny because that's part of the way that people can
Yeah.
help develop their intuitive sense. But now we have so much technology. We have caller ID. We have this. We have that. That kind of scrambles all of that and creates a barrier for us. Because part of spiritual development, psychic development, is about awareness. And I talk about this in the Afterlife Frequency, my latest book, Developing Your Spiritual Situational Awareness. And speaking of spirituality, this Saturday, June 10th and Sunday, June 11th, is the Spiritual Awakenings International 2023 online conference. And we had Dr. Yvonne Kaysen. She is the founder of SAI, and she's put together 33 spiritual teachers and leaders from a dozen different countries. And I'm kicking off the conference at 9 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. No, excuse me, 9
12.
a.m. Pacific, 12 noon Eastern. Geez Louise. Okay. And if you go to my website, afterlifefrequency.com, look in the calendar of events, you'll see the banner for Spiritual Awakenings International. Go ahead, click on that. It's free. This is a free conference, and you are hearing some really A-list speakers, including my friend and colleague, Dr. Jeffrey Long, who is the founder of the Near-Death Experience Research Foundation, NDERF. Of course, you'll be hearing from Dr. Kaysen as well, and also you'll be hearing from Ann Archer, AJ Parr. He's a major near-death experience researcher who speaks Spanish, and so he'll be giving a talk in Spanish as well. So this is a really, really great opportunity for everybody.
Also, I would like to add that for those who want to have a reading with Mark, you can go to his website, theafterlifefrequency.com, and click into the website to book a reading with Mark, as well as if you're in the Texas region of the United States, Mark will be at Body, Mind, and Soul in Houston on Katy Freeway, off of Katy Freeway, on June 16th and 17th. I understand one of the shows, and I'm calling them shows, one of the events are almost sold out, and we do have seats left for the Friday night event. So go to the website, you could see that, or call Body, Mind, and Soul in Houston. We also have Zoom light circles coming up. I'm just going to say that quickly.
Yeah.
Fridays and Saturdays, June 23rd and 24th. Once again, go to Mark's website and you can get a place in a light circle, which is very, very special.
Thank you, Rocky. I appreciate that. So, and you can find out about all of that at my website, afterlifefrequency.com. We're going to take a short break and we're going to be back. This is a call-in show, 1-800-930-2819. I'm Mark Anthony, the Psychic Explorer, Psychic Lawyer, and you're listening to The Psychic and the Doc. So we'll be back in just a minute. The Psychic and the Doc. I'm Mark Anthony, and I'm here with my co-host for this week, Rocky Trainer. And the theme of today's show is thanks for being a friend. And this is for honoring all our friends, both on this side and the other side. So, Rocky, what's going on?
Well, I just noticed we have Sandy from Connecticut that's on the line, and I know she's anxious to speak with you. Sandy, hello. Wow. That was surprising. Well, that was a call from the other side.
That was a call from the other side. Okay, so Sandy, call us back. Anyway, Rocky and I had a very special friend who passed in the last year, and her name was Wendy Cooper. Oh. And we actually had Wendy on The Psychic and the Doc, and Wendy was just amazing. She was beautiful, vivacious, bubbly, very, very spiritual, hysterically funny. And I was on her show a number of times in LA. She had a live stream show at UBN, the Universal Broadcasting Network. And we got to be really great friends. And Rocky, didn't you and Wendy have a very interesting experience one time with clouds?
Yes. We decided to, in Hollywood, I know this sounds silly, but we went to a famous graveyard for where all the stars have been laid to rest. Now, as we know, their spirit is still alive and going, but that's where the remains are. And Wendy said to me, she said, you know, I just love to lay down anywhere and look at clouds. And since it's so beautiful here, would you lay down with me and experience some clouds? And I said, okay. And we lay down in this graveyard. But it was like a beautiful feeling where we experienced clouds with different shapes. And people do that. And it's such a lovely thing that children do. And as adults, we kind of let those things go. But she and I had such a beautiful experience talking about what they meant to us, what people meant to us, and what the universe was saying. And I'll always remember that. And just before she passed, and she was having a very difficult time, I sent her pictures of clouds, and she texted me back saying, "Thank you. You said it all to me. Thank you." And that was our last communication.
You know, that's the type of thing that you can only share with a true friend.
Yes.
And, you know, it's things like that. The two of you laying down of all places in a cemetery. And of course, I was there off, like, you know, like enjoying, like seeing, well, enjoying, but you know, when you hang out with mediums, you tend to end up occasionally in cemeteries. And it's more of a research endeavor. But so it was really great to share that type of memory, Rocky, that you did
Yeah.
with Wendy. And, you know, oddly enough, we had another dear friend on the show who passed, and that was Shirley Bolstock. And Shirley Bolstock was a very gifted medium and numerologist. And it's funny because the way I met her, I was doing an event in Colorado, and Rocky and we walked into the venue, we were setting up, and Shirley came up and said, "Hi, I'm a medium, but I gotta go." And I'll never forget that. Yeah.
Yes.
But then over time, she and I started, you know, to correspond. And when we went out to Colorado, we had such amazing time with her. And Shirley was a truly unique person. And we had her on the first year of the Psychic and the Doc for our Passover. No, not Passover, our Hanukkah show, because Shirley was of Russian and Polish Jewish descent, and her parents actually were in a concentration camp. In fact, that's where they met as teenagers, in a concentration camp. Yeah. And so needless to say, Shirley's childhood was not easy, because people that were abused and terrorized in a concentration camp come out of that with not just post-traumatic stress disorder, but a lot of other issues. But Shirley was one of the most giving, loving, hilariously funny people. And so I just wanted to mention her again for being such a wonderful friend. Now, Sierra, I understand is Sandy back? Nope, Sandy's not back. Okay. All right,
That's
everybody,
fine.
this is a call-in show. It's 1-800-930-2819. We are taking calls tonight. Tonight's theme is about friends. And Rocky, who would you say is the most present company accepted, of course, most unusual friend you've ever had?
Oh, that's a good question. I have so many interesting friends, and off the top of my head, you've created a blank, because I feel like I am so fortunate to have so many wonderful friends in my life, and I've met people of so many diverse backgrounds, and that connection. Like, I have a girlfriend who is alive and well, and she and I met in high school. My girlfriend Rita, and Rita was the first Black student to attend my high school. And when she got off the bus, this beautiful, smiling face just changed everyone's minds about being different. And she was, and she is, such a great person. And we became great friends. And to this day, we remain friends. And she's not the only one. Today, a dear friend, Mayway, who lives in Sedona,
Yeah.
reached out to me, and She is just such a lovely, sweethearted person. And she and I met through doing events with Mark in Sedona. And she and I and Mark did a lot of exploration throughout the vortexes, and there's actually a forest in the Sedona area. And so no matter where you go, when you meet people and you make that connection, it doesn't matter how far apart you are, because that connection is just a moment away.
That's a really good point. And that's exactly how you know that you've got a great friend. Is you may not have seen each other for years, and when you see each other, you take up right where you left off.
That is so very true. So
Yeah,
very true.
yeah. I had another really great friend this year who also passed from cancer. His name was Dave. And he was, even though he was older than me, he was my fraternity little brother in college. And he'd been in the Navy. And this guy, he was one of the most interesting and kind of zany friends I ever had. And he was part of the Navy band. And he could play there. Remember that old TV show, Hogan's Heroes?
Yeah.
He could play the theme to Hogan's Heroes on the trombone, but get this, he would do it with his feet. I mean, he would sit on the ground and put the trombone with his feet, and he managed to get the mouthpiece up, and he pulled up da 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 da. I mean, it was one of the funniest things I'd ever seen. And then he had this tattoo on his arm, and it was lips with the tongue coming out. And I was looking at it going, that doesn't look right. He goes, yeah. He goes, it's supposed to be the Rolling Stones logo. He said, but I was in Singapore and I was really drunk, and I went to a tattoo parlor, and the guy there didn't know who the Rolling Stones were, so I drew it out. And he goes, and well, when I woke up the next morning hung over and I looked at it, I realized, oops, I drew it wrong. So he drew the Rolling Stones lips without the teeth, but he had the tongue sticking out. Dave was just, he was wild and crazy, but he was one of the most true blue, fantastic friends I've ever had. And I hadn't seen him in years. And I received a letter from his wife, and she reached out to me and said, you know, Dave always spoke very highly of you. And I remember her. Her name was Mary Lou, or is Mary Lou. And I remember when they met, and we went hiking in the mountains of Georgia and all this. Dave, Mary Lou, and I, and my friend Susan. And it just, even though I hadn't seen him in years, I sat down and I wept. I mean, it was just, wow. Because there are the thing about people we care about is you think they're always going to be here in this world. A couple of weeks ago when Tina Turner died. Now, granted, she was in her 80s and all that, but it was Tina Turner. And somebody on the news said, for some reason, we always felt Tina was just going to be there. And I think that's what it was. You know, Tina was just somehow always going to be there. And this is the lesson that we all learn, is that nothing is permanent. I mean, that's what Buddha taught, is that the only thing permanent is impermanence. And Hindus believe, as George Harrison wrote a song called All Things Must Pass. And that's the same with our physical lives. We come into this existence and then we leave it. But as my dear friend Rhonda Schwartz, she's a medium, she said, and I totally agree, you have one life and it's eternal. So we come in and out of lifetimes, but the who and what we are, what I have termed the electromagnetic soul, is a constant and is eternal. So we're coming up on a break, and for anyone that would like to call in, please call 1-800-930-2819. I look forward to taking your call. And even if you want to call in and talk about your friends or ask us questions on pretty much any topic, we're here for you. And we'll be back in just a minute. 1-800-930-2819. I'm Mark Anthony. You're listening to The Psychic and the Doc on the Transformation Network. Hello, welcome back to the Psychic in the Doc. I'm Mark Anthony, and I'm here with Rocky Trainer, my co-host. Dr. Pat will be back next week, and we've been talking about friends. And on the break, Rocky brought up a really interesting point about making friends that are different than yourself, your ethnic group, your age group even. Rocky, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, I think it's important not to go up to people that you don't know, but maybe to go to an event or a club or a gathering and make an effort to approach someone and engage in conversation. And maybe through that conversation, find a commonality to connect with that person and possibly say, how about if we meet for coffee? I'd like to know more about you as a friend. I just really enjoyed spending these few minutes with you, and nothing weird, just something that maybe would open up not only you, but the other person to how you think, how you live, your cultural differences, and exposing you to something that will enrich not only your life, maybe possibly their lives.
Because I know that we both have a friend Eve, and Eve's in a completely different generation. And what I really like about having friends who are a lot older than me is the wealth of knowledge and wisdom that you can gain from them. And what is really one of the negatives, I think, about American and Western society is how we marginalize our elderly. Whereas in Asia, an elderly person is to be respected and is seen as someone of great wisdom. Here, a lot of old people, elderly people, they're treated like wallpaper. You see them in public, and people like walk around them and don't acknowledge them. And I've said this on the show before, and I'm going to always say this. If you see an elderly person, open the door for them. Say good morning to them. We tend not to think of ourselves like let's say you're somewhere and a really well-built 20-year-old smiles at you and it makes your whole day. Okay, it's like, wow, that 20-year-old, all right, somebody who may be 80 or 90 and someone who's in their 30s, 40s, or 50s acknowledges them, guess what? It has the same impact. Send an elderly relative or friend, write a card, get a card, and just say, thinking of you, maybe write something going on in your life. Because what do elderly people get in the mail? Bills and junk mail. And in their generation, people would write. And the art of writing a letter seems to be shoved off to the side. But let's say that elderly person gets that letter. It makes their day. And I'm not flying my own flag by saying this, but I learned that lesson years ago because my grandmother, we called her Nanny, because in Italian it'd be Nana, but we called her Nanny. We anglicized it. And she was in declining health, and she was in her 90s. So I used to take pictures of like myself and my house and my office and stuff, and I'd write things on them, and I would send them to her in letters. And I did that maybe once a month, especially if something big was going on. And I understand that she passed in an assisted living facility. And one of my cousins, Lori, she said when they went to see her and she had passed, on the wall were every one of the pictures I sent her. She taped them on the wall. And that affected me in such a profound way. I didn't realize how meaningful that was to her. And that's why I'm sharing this with everybody, because things like that make a difference. Be a friend to an older person. Listen to them. If you have the benefit of being able to listen to a World War II or Korean War era veteran tell you about their experiences, listen to it. I have a friend, and he's much older than me. He's in his 80s, and his grandmother was 6 years old when the Union Army, Sherman's army, burned Atlanta. And he said that it was astounding to hear a first-hand account of the burning of Atlanta. I mean, that's just amazing. That's just amazing. And then he told me because he was from a very prominent family in Georgia, and then he told me when he was about 10, his parents took him to Warm Springs, Georgia, and he met President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, because President Roosevelt used to go to Warm Springs because he had polio, and he would swim in the naturally warm springs because a lot of people felt that it was very, very curative. And in fact, that's where FDR actually died, was in Warm Springs. And think about that, being able to share something like that. So that's why it's important for us to reach out to our older population, because they really do have a lot to teach us.
Yes, the wealth of knowledge from the elderly is simply amazing. And also, when you connect with an older person, it makes them recall of happier times, good times, and then they appreciate the fact of sharing their wisdom with you, because there's so much to glean and learn from an elderly person. I remember when Mark and I were on tour, and we were traveling out west, and we got thirsty. So we pulled off the road and we said, there's got to be a convenience store or something. And we kept on driving, and it was off the desert. And in the distance, we see this blinking light. And sure enough, it was a grocery store in the middle of nowhere, nothing else around it. And so we pulled in, and the store was bubbling with people inside. So we said, well, I guess there is a population somewhere.
Somewhere.
And
Yeah, I remember that.
somewhere. And while we were in the store, we picked up, just things to drink and some munchies because we had some traveling to do. And there was an elderly, sweet elderly man that was in the store, and he was talking with the girl at the front checkout. And she was young, she was very young, and she seemed kind of annoyed with him because she really didn't want to engage him. And he bought just a handful of things, and then he put it in a cart, and he just took it out the door. So immediately she apologized to us that it took so long to get that man through the line. Mark said, well, gee, maybe he has no one else to talk to. She goes, yeah, he comes here every day, sometimes 2 times a day. And then Mark says, well, of course, this elderly gentleman has no one to talk to. So this is his way of socialization. And she goes, oh, I never thought of that. So as we're walking out the store, this man was still going across the parking lot to his car. And Mark was such a gentleman. He went up to him and said, can I help lift this and put this in your car? This man turned around, and the biggest smile on his face, it just broke my heart. And he shook your hand and said, thank you so much. And then you realize that he had just lost his wife, his lifetime partner, and you basically gave him some very wonderful, peaceful things because you were feeling his wife around him and gave him a message. And he just shook your hand and said, thank you so much. I'm so glad I met you today.
You know,
an amazing.
I forgot about that until now. And when you said in the middle of nowhere, I remember it was this store. I mean, it looks like something out of an old John Wayne or Clint Eastwood movie. There was like a saguaro cactus, tumbleweeds blowing around. I mean, it was in the middle of the desert. And I remember it. And he was such a nice man. And I'm glad that you said you talked to the checker, the young lady, and she did say, I never thought about that. And the reason that he was going to that store 2-3 times a day is because she was probably the only person who would talk to him, and she saw it like, oh, this is a burden, but it wasn't a burden. And sometimes just by being polite, you're doing somebody a favor that you don't know about. See, we can all make a positive influence in the world. Not everybody is going to be like a statesman or a stateswoman or a politician or a famous celebrity or whatever. Sometimes making a difference is being a friend or being the sympathetic ear to the proverbial stranger. For many people, you may be somewhere and somebody you don't know sits down next to you, maybe on a bus, or you're waiting for something, and that person opens up to you. And I'm not saying, give them your phone number and take them home or anything like that, but just listening to a person and validating them, you don't know if you may have saved that person's life, because that person may be in such a pit of despair and so lonely, he or she was going to go home and end their own life. But because you gave them validation by listening, that can make all the difference in the world. We're coming up on a break, but when we come back, we'll talk more about, let's call it the Good Samaritan section of the show. So we'll be back in just a minute. This is the Psychic and the Doc. We got another good 15 minutes of the show. So if anybody would like to call in, 1-800-930-2819. And I know that there's a lot of high school graduations and college graduations going on this week. So for all you graduates, congratulations. All right, Sarah, take us out, and we'll be back in just a minute.
Just a minute.
Welcome back to the Psychic and the Doc. I'm Mark Anthony, and my amazing co-host, Dr. Pat Baccili, will be back next week. I'm here with Rocky Trainer, my co-host. Rocky, I understand Sierra has something to tell us. What do you got going on, Sierra?
I do indeed have a caller, and it is Derek from Ontario. Derek, you are live.
Thanks, Sierra. Hey, Mark, and hey, Rocky. This is my second time calling into the show, and both times it's been with Rocky and Mark, so I'll take it. It's about a year ago to the day almost. So, Mark, this is a very specific question. I could only ask a medium on this topic, but you mentioned at the beginning of the show, that you've lost some friends, and I think one of them you were talking about was Billy, who you mentioned in your book, and I'm just wondering. Yes. You had such a specific example of how he came through to you initially. Have you been able to maintain a spiritual relationship after that, or is that the type of relationship that only happens through those specific, I think it was a technology example or something? So.
Well, that was such a profound contact experience. And Derek, that's a great question, because a lot of times, people think that they're only going to come through once. And you got to realize, for the benefit of everyone, spirit communication does not have an expiration date. So a spirit will come through to you multiple times. The technology example that I gave was such a profound story that's why I gave it. But Billy has contacted me a number of times. My friend Shirley, that I was talking about earlier, I was heartbroken when Shirley died, and I was at home, and I went outside, and I'm standing in my front yard, and I see this long white feather. It was perfect. Had to be like 8 inches long. I mean, it was a beautiful, perfect white feather. And I looked at it, and my head filled with Shirley. And then all of a sudden, I heard her giggling. I heard her voice, and then I heard another person giggling, and it was my mom. And I'm like, oh my God, Mom and Shirley, spirits are coming forward together. And the more I thought about it is in this world, they would have gotten along really great. And apparently from the other side, they're getting along really great.
Right.
And the thing is, Derek, contact experiences don't always involve something like a piece of technology like it did with Billy, or a feather like it did with Shirley. Contact experiences come in many forms. It may be in the dream state, where you have contact with somebody when you're sleeping. And the reason I'm not calling it a dream, I call it the dream state, the sleep state, is because it's different than a regular dream. You have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it's very coherent. And you come out of it feeling, wow, that really happened. Sometimes you will catch a glimpse of somebody in your peripheral vision. And then you turn and they seem to have vanished. But they didn't vanish. In fact, this is one of the topics, or one of the things I'll be talking about in my presentation on Saturday at Spiritual Awakenings International. And I'm not going to reveal why that happens and how it happens, because everybody needs to tune in, because it's not just me that's speaking, but it's a lot of people. Other times you will smell a familiar scent and there's no source for it. And there's reasons why spirits will choose these particular types of things to get through to you. So let me ask you this, Derek. Have you had a visitation from a friend or a family member, and it has had different types of contact or multiple contacts?
Yeah, I've had a couple experiences. I've certainly had the odd one of seeing shadows peripherally. I wasn't able to identify who it was. And I've also had a couple of dreams with a grandmother where they seemed different to me because I could hear her speaking. And it's the only two times in my life I can say that's happened in a dream where I could hear the person speaking. So,
interesting. When you mentioned your grandmother, I kept seeing like a powder blue, a real powder pale blue color, and like maybe she was wearing that type of dress. But does a powder blue, a pastel blue color make sense to you in any way, Derek?
I can remember. I can remember the blue, from the dream for sure.
Okay. Yeah. So, okay, hold on. Grandma's coming through, and she said that you're not eating your fruit and vegetables. You're not eating your fruit and vegetables. And she just put a big bowl in front of me, and there's a banana, an apple, a mango, a papaya in it. And then what's with you in all the celery? Do you eat a lot of celery? What's going on with you in celery?
I don't eat celery. I eat a lot of greens, but not celery.
Okay, so she's bringing up celery. Now, there may be, digestive reasons why you're avoiding celery, and that may be what she's bringing up, but there may be something in celery which is good for you. What's with all the fruit? It's all tropical fruit, except for the apple. Do you eat a lot of fruit?
No, I really don't. A lot of, more so vegetables, but not a lot of fruit, no.
Well, you're doing pretty good. Now, I'm not going to tell you to go run out and eat a lot of fruit, but let me see. She brought, what was it? A pineapple, an apple, a mango, a papaya, and a banana. Now, papayas are good for digestion. Bananas are rich in potassium, which is always good. Apples are good in vitamin C and pectin. Mangoes, real high in vitamin C, but pineapples are natural anti-inflammatories. And a lot of holistic doctors and even medical doctors now are suggesting people eat pineapple to bring down inflammation. So you may want to consider incorporating some fresh fruit, not canned, but some fresh fruit in your diet. So hold on. And your grandmother is saying to me to tell you that, Derek, one of your virtues is patience. And she said that you have developed a really wonderful sense of patience, and you bring a lot of happiness to people because you are one of those folks that listens. So that's a very nice message that she wants to leave you with.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you. I was only calling for a question, but always take the bonus reading. So, thanks, Mark.
Well, when you start talking about it, I was like, okay, she's here, and I figured, okay, then this is the time. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Whereabouts in Canada are you from?
Well, Toronto's the common reference point. I'm about an hour west of Toronto, Southern Ontario.
Oh, because I was going to mention I lived in Canada for a while, and there's I think still Kensington Market, which has it's an amazing place to pick up unusual and tropical fruits. So maybe a trip on a weekend or something could be a lot of fun to do and explore some things you haven't ever tried before. So I thought I'd suggest that.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's still there. I don't go there often, but I've been through there in the past. Sure.
Oh, good. So,
Thanks, Marky.
Mark, do you have any other questions or anything else for Derek?
No, Derek, I think it's good, except your grandmother's holding up a starfish. Now, I'm pretty sure that starfish aren't, wafting around in Toronto. So this could mean some type of happy memory between you and her along the ocean or seaside, or this could mean that you possibly are planning some type of trip to the ocean in the not too distant future. Does that make any sense?
Not planning any trips, but I remember in her apartment growing up, she had seashells and different sort of ocean memorabilia from some South Carolina and some Vero Beach trips. Perfect.
There you go. Okay, Sierra just gave me the 1 minute mark. Derek, thank you for calling in. I look forward to you calling back. Everyone, I'm going to please invite everyone to go to my website. You can find out about Spiritual Awakenings International, and on June 23rd and 24th, I've got 2 Light Circle Spirit Communication events, limited to 6 people each, where that way I can guarantee that everybody gets connections with their loved ones in spirit. And I'll be back next week and the week after. And this is the Psychic in the Doc, the Transformation Network. And Dr. Pat will be back next week as well. And I want to thank especially Rocky for guest hosting. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Thank you for being a friend. God bless and good night.
Good night. Namaste. Thank you, Sierra.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the Psychic in the Doc with Mark Anthony and me, Dr. Pat Baccili, right here on TransformationTalkRadio.com. Hey, look, come back next week so we can explore with you more of life's many challenges and learn from fascinating guests. And you know what? Even Mark and me. We'll connect you and discover insights from people in this life and from the afterlife. Extraordinary problems? Yeah, they do. They require extraordinary solutions. But step into the world of possibilities with us on the Psychic and the Doc. That's every Thursday, 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on TransformationTalkRadio.com. That's TransformationTalkRadio.com. And don't forget, we're also live face-to-face on Facebook.com, Transformation Talk Radio.